Today, I wrote this sermon today in preparation for our first Wednesday night PPPs that we have. Okay, if you guys haven't been to the Triple P, which is praise, preach, and prayer, on the first Wednesday, you guys definitely should come at least one time. Okay, it is definitely really good because you get to see many different ministers come up there and give a good word, but also it's just a good time to fellowship and praise and getting some good prayer. But when I wrote this, I came across a situation in my life, something that it troubled my heart. And I didn't feel right getting up and preaching this sermon, so I called Pastor on the phone. I said, Pastor, I can't do this. I can't do this. Now, of course, in my own thinking, right, I didn't go to God. I went to my own thinking, right? So later, I started, after I canceled this, I started praying, I started talking to God, and God said, no, I gave you that word to go give to the community. It's not about you, it's about what I want you to give to the community. I said, okay. So I called Pastor up, and Pastor said, well, son, I'm already going to do the sermon on Wednesday night, so you're just going to have to sit this one out. I said, well, Pastor, I really got to get this. Guys tell me I really got to get this out. So he said, okay, well, I'll let you go ahead and preach while I'm out of town. I said, okay, I'll do it. So I just need you to understand that the things that I'm going to be speaking about today in this sermon, they are things that involve not only my life, but each one of us. Everybody goes through these things that I'm going to be talking about today, okay? So we're going back over the sermon, the scripture today from Psalm 37, chapter 37, 7 through 9. It says, be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices. Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself, it tends only to evil. For the evildoer shall be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land. If there is any theme for today, it will be slow down to speed up. Now, over the past month, we were studying the book of Nehemiah in Bible study, and we learned about, among other things, Nehemiah's faith, his steadfastness, and his patience. Now, patience is an action that many of us struggle with. And these studies made me reflect on some of the life lessons that I have learned, because in a world full of instant gratification where you can just please yourself at the drop of a dime, we may begin to question why we should wait. Why should we be patient with others? Why should I be patient with my situation? Why should I take my time? Now, a very wise woman, she ain't in here right now, my wife, told me that time is one of our most precious commodities. However, as a collective, we have leaned so far into this idea that many times we end up losing time when we thought that we were just seizing the moment instead of making the most of our time. Those times where you see an opportunity and you just take it instead of thinking about how that situation is going to affect you later on down the road in your life, right? Like that young man or young woman who is so desperate for physical intimacy that they dive headfirst into physical intimacy and fornication, not thinking about down the road they're going to have to deal with maybe a life of early parenthood or maybe even STDs or things of that nature, sometimes even worse. There is this desire that we have to lean into momentary gratification by giving way to compulsion that often cripples our decision-making process while simultaneously pulling us away from God. Ephesians chapter 5, 15 through 16 says, look carefully then how you walk, not as wise, but as wise, making the best use of your time, because the days are evil. The Bible makes it very clear that it is not being fast, it is about making the best use of your time. It is about thinking before you act. That it is ultimately unwise to be compulsive or quick to respond, choosing to forego patience and faith. Now, another wise person I know once told me that sometimes you need to slow down in order to speed up. Now, as many of you may have known, I do ride a motorcycle. I worked for Harley-Davidson motorcycles for a long time, for many years. I sold motorcycles for a very long time, and at the time, my bosses, Mark and Mike, they would say this to our team all the time: you need to slow down to speed up. We had a sales process that many of the sales reps rarely followed. And even I was guilty at many times not even following the sales process. It was a process that we practiced almost daily, yet even though we knew what we were supposed to do, when we got a customer, we would skip the process. See, sometimes I was in a bad mood, or I was too tired, or I had all these outside excuses as to why I wouldn't follow the process. This process was long, and to those who weren't accustomed to using it, it was very hard. I'm going to give you an abridged version of this process. You greet the customer, hopefully with a smile and kind words. Okay? You spend some time getting to know about them and their day. You find out about their motivations. You then take them on a tour of the dealership. You show them all the reasons why they should buy from us, while also learning about them and the things that they want to do when they ride a motorcycle. After learning everything that you need to know, you then take them to the perfect motorcycle of their dreams. And then you give them all the features, advantages, and benefits of this motorcycle. You then take them on a test drive, allow them to see the world on this new motorcycle. And then when you get back from the test drive, you even ask them more questions, and you find out even more, trying to build a relationship with this person. What did you like about the ride? What was it so good for you? And then you finally get a commitment from them to sit down and look at numbers. And if you're a good salesperson, you sit down and you shut up and you let your supervisor handle the rest. Okay? This process can take about 1 to 2 hours. How many of y'all been to a dealership? How many of y'all have spent like your whole day up inside of a dealership? This is why, because it's a process, okay? Now, odds are, if you're very good at this process, you're going to sell lots of motorcycles, okay? If you're not good at this process, you are not going to sell a lot of motorcycles, okay? Now, I would watch as many sales reps would get a customer, and then within 2 minutes of them speaking with this person, they're already sitting down talking about numbers. We used to call that a 1-7, right? The person goes 1-7. They go to step 1 to step 7. They skip everything in between, okay? And the people that would be sitting them down, eventually this deal would either do one of two things. Either they would be sitting down, haggling and arguing for hours about price, or the person would get up and leave, and they say, I can't do this, I'm out. There was no relationship built, there was no process. And these same sales reps, they would be crying and complaining to our bosses during the sales meeting saying, why can't I sell a motorcycle? These bikes are too expensive. Nobody's going to buy this motorcycle. Those other salespeople, they're cheating. But if they would just follow the process, if they would just slow down and be patient instead of trying to race to the finish line, odds are their outcome would be different. This same lesson applies to our life. See, just like sales, our life has a process, right? We have instructions from God, which is the Word of God, the Bible, or Bible, basic instructions before leaving earth, right? That if we apply it to our lives, odds are we will probably have a fairly prosperous life, right? If we show a little bit more patience instead of compulsion, if we love a little bit more instead of being hostile, if we follow God's law instead of our own thoughts or what the society tells us we should do, maybe things might be different. If we took the time to treat each other the way God calls us to treat one another, then maybe things wouldn't be so hard. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that God is promising us, riches and wealth on earth, but, many of us want to live our lives without the process, without instruction. Even when we say as Christians that we have dedicated our lives to Christ, we will fall short of walking how God has designed us or is trying to teach us how to walk. Because we're too tired, or because we had a fight with our spouse, or because our kids are acting up, or because we're just simply annoyed and irritated at the state of the world. We choose to lack patience instead of having the patience and the faith that it takes patience and precision to walk in the footsteps of Christ. Now, I just want to give you guys an illustration. If you had a line of footsteps ahead of you, it would take some precision and patience to make sure your foot aligns with each and every step. If you just try to run through it, what's going to happen? You're going to create a whole nother path. There'll be something else there. It ain't going to be the path that you was walking down. It takes a lot of patience and precision. In my experience in sales, I learned one thing. The people do not follow the process because they don't trust the process. They don't believe or have faith that they will be led to victory. They trust their own devices and oftentimes their own bad habits, their own methods. I got this thing figured out, they say. Oh, that's not necessary, they say. They somehow believe that the owner who built this company they haven't figured out the best practices to bring success to their people. That there must be a path that in the 120 years of this company's existence that hasn't been taken yet. I must be the first of millions to do this. I'm the first one to go away from the process. Didn't you know? This is the way we treat our life. We run around thinking that we have it all figured out. I'm guilty. I'm guilty. Like regardless of the billions and billions of people all around the world who have done things my way, somehow I'm going to be different. I'm going to be different. Like despite the fact that God built and designed this world, even though he laid out all the instructions, somehow I know better. The truth is, we are hardwired to avoid pain and to seek comfort. And because of that, many times we will lean into what's most comfortable for right now in an attempt to avoid pain. Come on now. We're like this from birth. My little baby that's right there in my mother's arms, okay? She don't want to sleep on the hard floor, right? She don't want to eat vegetables and stuff like that. She's like, give me that fruit, right? We want to go with what's most comfortable. Trying to avoid pain, not realizing that we're still headed towards pain anyway. Do you want it now or do you want it later? Pain is inevitable. But if you have the patience and the faith to allow God to lead you through that momentary discomfort and pain, the reward is great. James chapter 1 verses 2 through 4 says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let the steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and what? Complete." Let me read that again. "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing." God is telling us that we must stick to the process. But also he's telling us that not only to accept the pain, but to lean into it. That momentary discomfort is just a part of the process. Those trials and tribulations are just a part of the process. The haters and the naysayers are just a part of the process. That time of uncertainty is just a part of the process. That time of illness is just a part of the process. That momentary frustration is just a part of the process. So that was Nehemiah. No matter what happened, no matter who tried to deter him, he just stuck to the plan and the process that God laid out for him. No matter what was said, no matter what they tried to do, they even tried to sneak him and say, hey, come on over. He said, no, process. That's what we are called to do, to have patience and faith. Do you have the faith to be uncomfortable and the patience to endure pain, or will you laugh now and cry later? Let me say that again. Do you have the patience and the faith to endure the pain, or will you laugh now or cry later? This is one of the conundrums that we face in our day-to-day lives. See, it's easy to follow the process when the sun is shining. When your belly's full, right? When your money's just right and all your bills are paid. You know, when your car is running just right and the traffic is moving steady along. Nobody's cutting in front of you. When your boss is kind and understanding. When there's no haters and everyone seems to be supportive of what you're doing. When everything is, as Goldilocks would say, just right. But when things get tough, are you going to have the faith and the fortitude to endure to victory, or will you attempt to bypass the struggle? See, what my boss used to say, slow down to speed up, what he was trying to get across was that doing something the right way but slowly will always be faster than trying to speed through, making mistakes that you're going to have to go back and correct. Right? Listen, I was young once. I mean, I know I still kind of look young, you know, but I was young once, and in my young days, I wanted to be grown so bad. I wanted to be grown so bad that I'm running through life, making mistakes. And you know what I learned? Is that oftentimes we make mistakes that ain't no way you can go back and fix it. You ain't going back to fix some of the stuff that you messed up, okay? Sometimes these mistakes are going to be permanent. You got to slow down and speed up. See, sometimes we make these mistakes not understanding that there is going to be something down the road. Sometimes we want things right now. We have this instant gratification. I need this right now. Somebody gives it to me right now, and then we get it, and I realize 10 years from now, that was the wrong move. That was the wrong move. Can't go back now. You only get a chance to do it one time. It is not going to hurt you to go the extra mile from time to time. It's not going to hinder you to be thorough and meticulous. We have to stop trying to make shortcuts thinking that we can bypass struggle and strife. Slow and accurate is fast. When you measure twice, you only got to cut one time. Slow down to speed up. To God be the glory.